I know I've heaped a terrible amount of bad economic news on you, and I'd like to give you a break, but I can't because I want to share something with you that struck me last week while I watched Mitt Romney. And it is the thing that frightens me the most that we are unprepared for, and that is velocity. Velocity, the amount of economic activity associated with a given money supply. Velocity is something that no one will explain to you, and it is critical that every American understands it. Let me show you first how we got into this problem. We got into this problem because the banks only wanted to loan money to these houses here because they could afford the houses. They could afford the loans. But the government got involved and said you had to give money to all of these houses so every American could get a loan. Doesn't matter. You could give a cat as collateral, and they would accept the cat as collateral. Okay? Government said, you're going to do it or we're going to shut you down. And so, like the wusses that they are, they did it. They took their spine and went home. So when the crisis hit, the banks didn't have enough money. Because normally, let's say this guy defaults, and the bank has a little extra money over here in the vault, and they just take it and they cover the loan. Got it? But because the hit was so massive, they didn't have enough. And that's why the banks started going down, because they couldn't cover all of these loans, and the money had to come from someplace. So what happened? The government got involved and told the Fed and the Treasury that they had to bail out the banks by dropping the Fed's discount window to 0%, which means they can come over here and get big bags of money and not pay any interest on it and keep them at the bank. Got it? The discount window. It was great. And the banks grabbed all this money and kept it in their vault. That's why when people say, well, they're not loaning anything out. No, because the government forced them to make all of these loans that they couldn't cover. Then the government said, you have to have enough money in there. So they convinced the Fed to open up funny money window and put all the money in the bank so they can cover in case all this goes down. But the left says the bank's greedy. It's evil. No. This is the one that is greedy and evil. Are there some bad people working at the banks? Yeah. Did they make mistakes? Yes. That's why they should be allowed to fail. But the government said they had to have more in reserve and keep more in reserve because trouble is on the way, and they know it. Think about this. Banks have all this cheap money. They got it at a discount window. They could make a boatload of money on that. All they have to do is loan it out. Take all this money, loan it out, charge people 5% interest. You keep all 5% interest. That's fantastic. Loan it out. They can't, because these guys are saying you have to hold it in reserve. And this is where velocity comes in. The money sitting here has zero velocity. Velocity. This is what velocity means. Velocity, how do we turn this? There it is. Velocity really means this. Here's the Fed. How long does it take the Fed to take their money and give it to the bank, and the bank loan it to business, and then they pay you for making that product, and then you take that paycheck and spend it in a store, and that money goes back to the bank, and then the interest is paid to the Fed. That's velocity. How long does it take to get from the Fed to the Fed? Well, in this case, it doesn't, because it doesn't pass here. It's not going anyplace. It's just sitting there. Now hold that thought, because I also want to talk to you about inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods, right? Well, we're told there's no inflation, but that is fairly obvious to anyone who eats. There is inflation. The feds prefer the calculation of inflation that doesn't factor in food and energy prices, because who buys those anymore, really? Beef prices are up 6%. Corn futures are up 40%. Soybeans are up 32%. Why is that? Why is that? Because we know there's a shortage coming because of the drought. Gas prices rose 21% in August and are now at $3.82 a gallon. Why is that? Because you can only buy oil in U.S. dollars, and we're inflating our money. Bernanke is talking about yet another round of QE3, quantitative easing, printing or digitizing more money. Well, when money is printed up or digitized and sent out, it still sits there, but it's a ticking time bomb. Because once it's pushed out, it picks up velocity and it goes up into the system, which causes inflation. If this piece of candy is 25 cents when everything is great, when everything is normal, it's 25 cents, great. But if people don't have work, and there's a whole bunch of candy out there because nobody can buy it, the price of that candy goes down. That's deflation. 5 cents. I'll give me 5 cents for that. Deflation. But what happens if there's only half a piece of candy instead of one? There's only half, and there's the money out there to buy it, then it's 50 cents because I've got bidders. Who's going to take it? Who wants it? He'll give me 25, but there's only half a piece left. Because we haven't seen this part have any money, the business, you, the stores, nobody spending any money, this hasn't been making candy. So there's too few goods out on the shelves. There's nothing in reserve. If this money starts to flow out, this happens. The Fed is supposed to guard the economy with interest rates. The banks will get the bad rap when interest rates go up. Remember, under Carter, they were over 20%. Well, what does that mean? Well, let me show you. Money plus velocity equals inflation. You can reduce inflation by reducing the money. That's how they do it. They raise the interest rates. That means if I borrow $100 and it's 20% interest, the bank says, okay, just pay me back $120. Well, what do they do with that $20? This is really critical because this is what the Fed does. And by the way, we couldn't use real money, apparently. We had to get, like we needed printed on here, play money. What they do is they take that money and they set it on fire. They burn it at the Fed. They destroy it. They get rid of it. They've got to pull it out of the system. It stops people from using that money and buying stuff. That brings inflation down because you don't have so many dollars chasing so few goods. So much money has been pumped into this system. There is a ton of burning that has to be done. But interest rates are really a low concern. As a small businessman, I'm thinking about the interest rates, and everybody is telling me money is so cheap, money is so cheap, money is so cheap. Yes, it is. But the future is not bright because no one is thinking logically. So I don't know what the government is going to do. I have no idea if they're going to put me out of business next year through taxes, or through health care, or whatever else they decide to do. But if I get Romney and Ryan, well, now I know what they're going to do. Wait a minute. This is a lose-lose situation. I'd rather lose with Romney and Ryan. But understand, this is why we're not out of the woods if Romney and Ryan... If Obama wins, we have hyperinflation coming at some point. Total destruction of everything, globally, because they're doing it to the globe. But if you get Ryan and Romney, somebody in the press should ask them, how are you going to fix this? Because interest rates will kill us. I won't be able to afford, you won't be able to afford a house, I won't be able to afford a business loan if this is 30, 40%. What does it need to be to pull all this money back into the system, to suck it back in, to get those 20 extra bills in so they can be burned? What does it need to be? And how are you going to do it so it doesn't cripple the business community and the average person who need a loan to be able to survive? More importantly, if the banks have all of this money, if Romney and Ryan are elected, immediately businesses like me, because there's trillions sitting out on the sidelines holding their breath, they don't know what to do. They're afraid of this government. If that fear goes away and they say, we're going to start building, this money starts to be pumped through the system, which means inflation goes up quickly. Gang, we have tough times ahead of us. We have a clear decision, an easy decision in my book, because I'll bet on the American people every time. But don't let your friends try to convince you that we don't have tough times ahead of us. Remember, it was 20% interest rates and tough times for the first 2 years of Ronald Reagan after Jimmy Carter did this. It's going to be much worse this time, but we will make it. And we'll live some other day to have somebody show a highlight film of Barack Obama's great economy, just like tonight at the DNC. They're showing the highlight films of Jimmy Carter and his administration and how great things were back then, which I guess will take up about 21 seconds. And I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of that time.